will just kick us off by introducing UXPA. So hopefully you can see that slide there now. Let me know if I accidentally shared one of my other mini screens. But here we go. This is our May event. Welcome. We have a regular event almost every month for UXPA Minnesota. I'm your president, Andy Kruger. It's so great to have you here tonight or watching with us later on the recording. We are tonight talking about UX and virtual reality, and then we have next month a panel discussion on mastering the design career. So actually getting out of practice a little bit and talking about your career itself and how you can get better at it, grow to where you want to be and what you want to be doing. And then the month after that, July, we do have our summer social. I've been getting more questions about this. We're very excited about it. If you saw my newsletter this week, you know, we are planning, we're so close to having a finalized venue and plans. We do have a date that I put out. I should have had that on here. I didn't, I'm sorry. But check your email or check our website and make sure you do save the date for that event, because it's a fun time for us to get together actually in person and just hang out. And that's a perk of being a member as well. And then in August, we've also got an event scheduled coming up on opening the doors for a new diverse generation of UX folks. And far in the distance, but coming sooner than we would hope, in November, we do have World Usability Day, and more to come on that later on as well. And as you can see, we had a couple months that don't have anything final in them yet. So it's not too late. If you're interested in presenting, sharing what it is that you work on or things that you're learning about, you can reach out to our program director or associate program director, Jason and Jalen. Their contact information is here. They're always interested in hearing about concepts and people that want to come and present either at our monthly events or at that World Usability Day, which I'll say is about health. Basically, the overall theme for this year is around our health. So especially if you work at a healthcare company, or if your job somehow touches on any aspect of health, mental, physical, psychological, anything, we'd love to talk with you about taking part in that as well. And we also hope that you get value from these events. And if you do, consider membership. There's a few perks that I'm not going to read off, but they're all listed there. And as I mentioned, also free admission to our summer social is one of those perks. In fact, this year, we're probably going to have to limit attendance to just members, because we're going to have a slightly limited cap on attendance. So if that's something you want to get in on, make sure you look at signing up, and we'd love to have you as a member. And then just one last thing before we hand it over, we want to always thank our sponsors. These are folks who contribute financially to help us keep things going, paying the bills, and also paying for that summer social and World Usability Day for all our expenses there. So thanks to our gold level, high level sponsors, Optum, Boston Scientific, Foundry, and Beacon Hill for their support of UXPA Minnesota. And last but not least, Securian Financial also coming in at the silver level. And again, if you're someone who wants to support the work that we do at UXPA MN, it's all volunteer work, and we're just here to support the community. If that's a community you want to be part of and be seen in, we would still take sponsors for the year, and we also will need sponsors for World Usability Day. So feel free to reach out to me if that's something you want more information about. And if you don't do that soon, I might be reaching out to you. So that's it for the preamble tonight. And with that, we will hand it over to tonight's guest. Andrew Baussan is here. He's ready to talk. We already got started talking. We were so excited to start, but he's going to introduce us to some of the innovations of 3M's augmented reality and virtual reality capabilities. He's the lead designer on projects there, so he is very involved in this work, and we're all really excited to hear what he's got to say. In addition to that work that he's done, he's also been involved with creating branded marketing material and other design projects and photo shoots. He comes to us with a BA in graphic design from the Art Institutes International, Minnesota, and I always like to share that graduation information too. So if there's any other alumni in the chat, you can give him a shout out. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Andrew. Take it away.
If there's any other alumni from the Art Institutes, I'm sorry, just as I'm sure you are as well. Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking to you guys about virtual reality design best practices. I'll touch on augmented reality as well, though virtual reality is, I think, the more established of the two technologies right now. But definitely in the Q&A, if you have any augmented reality questions or mixed reality questions, I'm more than happy to answer those as well. And I think it's much easier to kind of tell you about VR design by also telling you about my journey into virtual reality and what I learned along the way. So today I'm going to be showing you a lot of VR videos. I think it's important, though, to know that VR content is very different when viewed on a 2D screen. But I think that a lot of the examples that I will show still communicate the design principles that I want to talk about. Feel free to ask questions as I go, but I know that I will also have time at the end to answer any questions that you might have. All right. Now, a lot of these meetings, I like to take a few minutes to give some definitions before we start into the presentation. It's very important for you to know the difference between AR, VR, MR, and 360 videos. So first is virtual reality. Now, the definition that I use for virtual reality is complete sensory immersion into a computer-generated environment through a headset. So you might be familiar with the Oculus or the Vive or the Index. So just know that there are a lot of VR headsets on the market right now, and the number is growing every year. The headsets are constantly getting better and more powerful and smaller. Augmented reality is really on the rise, and you should really know that currently augmented reality is primarily used on phones and tablets. Microsoft has the HoloLens 2, obviously, but unlike VR, there are not as many options for AR headsets. And this is certainly going to change in the future, but right now we're still pretty limited in the type of devices that can run augmented reality. And then we have 360 video. I think this is the most important distinction for a lot of people. There are many people that do not understand the difference between a 360 video and virtual reality. And I think that stems from the fact that they are typically viewed in the same device. But the main difference is that a 360 video cannot be edited, interacted with, and is far less immersive. It certainly has its benefits, but it should not really be confused with virtual reality. I also want to touch on mixed reality. This is a term you guys are probably going to be hearing quite a lot in the future. And the definition of mixed reality is still pretty argued over just in general. I would say my definition of mixed reality is when you have a hardware that can seamlessly switch between a virtual environment and an augmented reality environment, right? And so there's examples of that you can find online. I think my personal favorite is the way that the Vario headset does that. And the Vario is able to very, very seamlessly switch between pass-through AR and virtual reality. And I would say that was probably the most successful mixed reality headset out there. Now, who am I? I'm Andrew Baussan. I'm the lead designer at the 3M Design Center. I went to school to be a graphic designer initially, but my career has taken me in a lot of different directions. I started at 3M in 2012 and worked in the traffic safety business. My work in VR really began in 2015 and has been ramping up ever since then. I hear that a lot of people on this call are, oh, sorry, this is for a different presentation. I know you guys want to talk about UX design, so I'm gonna get into that in a moment here. So the design principles I pull out of these, out of my experiences, I'm gonna list at the end here. And I think that it's been a really fun journey for me learning about VR and getting into it. Now, what got me into VR was in the transportation safety division. We make pretty much everything shiny that goes on the road. There is really no better way to put it than that. We make all the signs, pavement markings, work zone barrels, sheetings, license plates that you see on the road. If you see something reflective while you're driving, most likely 3M is the company that makes that. And the best way that we can demonstrate those materials is to actually have people in their cars at night looking at comparisons of different levels of retroreflectivity. So to do that well, we actually built a test track in Cottage Grove, Minnesota, where customers can come to see all of our products. I think the big problem is getting international customers to fly out to scenic Cottage Grove, Minnesota, right? And since we are a global company, we tried to figure out how can we bring this experience to other people. And at the time, I was in the 3M Gaming Club, and we started taking a look at the Oculus Rift, which was just released right around that time. It was starting to grow in popularity. And I said, well, you know, if we can utilize the Oculus Rift and create virtual reality simulations, maybe we can bring the test track to our customers. And so in 2015, we started making our first virtual reality demo. It was a very simple demo. It's a 5-minute driving experience. And we put the user behind the wheel of a car and allowed them to see all of our products in the same way that they would see them on the test track, except we had more control over the scenery and the environment. So for instance, some of our products have a significant reflective advantage when it rains. In real life, we had to build a huge sprinkler system to try and show that off. But in VR, I can make it rain whenever I want. This and a variety of additional controls allowed us to tell a story in an effective 5-minute demo. We released this at our first trade show of the year, and it was just a huge success. Customers were just flocking to this demo. And I know for sure in 2015, we were the first people in the transportation industry that was featuring virtual reality at all. So in the demo that you're seeing here, this is showing cars passing under high intensity prismatic sheeting, which is actually typically externally lit. But when the lights go out, the sheeting becomes very, very dim, especially at the angle that the car is at with their headlights. But diamond grade sheeting, which is a 3M product, is actually much, much brighter and does not require to be externally lit. So this is what we're trying to demonstrate inside of this demo here. And we learned some really key things from these two demos. Number one was that people were just over the moon about it, right? We had tons of people requesting demos, and it kind of became my job to just be wheeling around computers all over the place and giving people demonstrations of this technology, and also shipping it out to all these different countries around the world that we're going to do this same road safety demo for their customers. And so I think the biggest takeaways we had from the very first demo that we had was that we wanted to give the user more control. So whether it's through interactivity or engaging animation, we need to keep the viewer's brain engaged. And the longer they sit and watch essentially a video in VR, the more bored they get and the more aware they are of how uncomfortable a VR headset is. So the demo that we showed them incorporated a steering wheel, but no real ability to control the speed of the car or the direction. You could kind of steer side to side, but you couldn't really veer off if you wanted to. It was very minimal type of steering. People were okay with that at first, but once they realized that they didn't need to steer, they quickly got bored. And many people just wanted to crash, wanted to race the car, wanted to drive off road. And we also learned that people are excited and wary of this technology, right? People are really worried about getting motion sickness in VR, and that's still true today. It was even more true in 2015 when a lot of people had not done VR. And in fact, a lot of people's exposure to VR were YouTube videos of people doing a roller coaster simulator and getting really scared and sick. So when they approached our driving simulator, they were very, very worried that they were going to get sick as well. Now, just a side note, a little bit about VR sickness, because it is a real thing. When we look at VR sickness, it's very similar to seasickness, right? So with seasickness, my eyes are seeing a scene that doesn't look like it's moving that much. But in reality, my body is swaying quite a bit, right? So if I'm below deck, I'm not able to see the horizon shifting. And my brain is really concerned. It's like, I feel this motion, but I don't see this motion. I'm going to throw up and see if that helps me get myself more even keel. The same thing happens, but in reverse in VR. So I'm seeing motion. I'm seeing motion, but I'm not feeling that same motion. So when I'm on a roller coaster, I know exactly how that's supposed to feel. And when I don't feel that, my brain gets really upset because what it's seeing and what it's feeling are not in alignment at all. And I would say that the feeling of sickness can be even more powerful than seasickness when you're doing virtual reality. And there are a lot of keys that help you to eliminate kind of the sickness element from virtual reality. A big one is to make sure that the motion that the user is feeling is also the motion that they're initiating, right? So if I move my arm moves in a similar way inside of VR. If I walk forward in the real world, I'm actually walking forward in virtual reality. And so there's a lot of different techniques we use to alleviate that. I'm not going to go into all those techniques right now, but if you guys have questions about them later on, I'm more than happy to answer those. There are some other learnings that we had about our first demo, and I think this is a really important thing to know when designing for virtual reality, because this is more about the physical user experience. Glasses are a really huge barrier to VR. I know this issue is going to be solved at some point, but people who wear glasses, especially if they have larger glasses, can really have a hard time getting their head into a VR headset. Also, face pressure is a huge problem. So VR headsets are usually pretty heavy and they have some pretty heavy duty straps to keep them on your head. And so if you make those straps tight, like you're supposed to, you can actually experience quite a bit of pressure on your face, which can be uncomfortable. It can leave marks. And for people who wear makeup, it can just ruin your makeup. And since we make these demos primarily for a business environment, people are generally coming to our demos having made themselves look nice, put their makeup on, done their hair. And it's really challenging for me to say, hey, why don't you take this 5-minute demo and it's going to wreck your look for the rest of the day. So we try to find ways that we can get around this problem, either by scheduling meetings later in the day so that it's not going to be something that's going to affect you the entire day, or we have actually come up with different ways to have people interact with the headset. Sometimes we even remove the straps entirely and allow users to hold the headset up so it's not nearly as tight against their face. But this is a problem that they're going to have for quite a while until headsets can get lighter and don't need that heavy strap anymore. And hair is the same way as face pressure is. You know, a lot of people do their hair before they go to work. And, you know, I actually get my hair cut short just because I have a VR headset on every day. And I used to, when I had long curly hair, have a giant like line down the center of my head where I essentially look like Ace Ventura from the second Ace Ventura movie, which was not a good look for me, I promise. It was not good. Also, during the time of COVID, sanitation was a really big deal for these headsets. So keeping them clean was also something that was really important to us. Now, the next demo we made went in an entirely different direction. So this demo was to showcase the way our materials would interact with automated vehicles. The initial idea was to create a modular experience where the user could see all the different situations an automated vehicle could find itself in, and how 3M material could assist those automated vehicles in navigating around problems. We had learned from our last demo. So in this demo, the user had control over how they wanted to navigate through the demo's content. Also, we realized that it would not be practical to be photorealistic for our animations for how much content we were putting into the experience. So we chose a different direction stylistically, and customers really actually liked the cartoon world, and we were able to render this very, very easily. What I liked about this too was it had, you almost kind of felt like Godzilla in this demo, and a lot of people really liked that because you're like looking at this tiny town around you. And we put all these unique, smaller experiences in them, like little Easter eggs people could find all over the place. And while they were learning about our materials, they were really engaged with all those other little features that you put inside of there as well. And we had a lot of learnings from this one. And this one, I think, really gave us some perspective on how challenging virtual reality design can be. So first off, the game mechanics that you create in a VR simulation have to be intuitive. And even if you think they're intuitive, they aren't always that way, right? I think one of the big things that comes up is that users don't do VR regularly. It's not like when you make a phone app or an internet app, people interact with those things all the time. And that's just not the case in virtual reality. Everything you're presenting them is sometimes the first time they've ever seen something like that. And that's the exact same with all the ways that they interact with the demo. So in this demo, we essentially made it so that the user had to aim their head at a nodule and then press a button on the controller, because this was actually made before they had hand controllers that could aim at things in the demo. So in this one, you were using your head essentially as a reticle. And we would say, hey, look at that circle and then click this button. And what we learned is a lot of people look with their eyes, but don't move their head at all. So if something's a little high for them, they don't actually move their head to look at it. And so it was really challenging when we actually brought this out to real customers because it wasn't something that we were expecting. And also the very first trade show we brought this to was a trade show for international customers. So trying to explain this game mechanic to people who did not have English as their primary language ended up becoming very, very challenging, right? And we had tested this very thoroughly in-house, but again, we were super biased because we did it every day. This mechanic was not one that we thought was going to trip people up at all, but it ended up being one of the biggest, most challenging mechanics to put into the simulation. We also had to find ways to dictate where the user should be looking, right? So a lot of the times in this demo, we would have, oh, let me start it over again here. Okay, perfect. A lot of times in this demo, we would have situations where we wanted the user to be looking one direction, and then we wanted them to move back and look another direction, and then move their eyes back and look a different direction. And this was something that was really hard for customers to follow, even with visual stimuli that was supposed to be telling them where to be looking, where they should be looking. People just intuitively look kind of all over the place when they're in VR. So you really have to come up with mechanisms that actually force them to look the direction you want them to look. And you can do this by having sound or noises that come out of the side of, or out of the side that you want them to kind of turn their head. You can do this by having artificial arrows that tell them which direction they should be looking, or pausing the content until they're looking in the right direction. There's a lot of different ways to deal with this, but one thing that is true in a lot of the VR demos that I've done is there's such a variety of people that look in different directions when they are in VR. And what I mean by that is some people are very used to television, so they just never move their head. They get in a VR headset and they just look straight ahead, expecting that everything is always going to be directly in front of them. And even when you ask them to look around, they might very minimally look, but they're not actually engaging in the way that you want them to. So you have to force them to move their head. On the flip side, you have some people that are so excited to be in VR, they just look in every direction except for the one that you want them to be looking, right? You can't keep their attention at all. And those people also need to be directed on where they should be looking. So the last demo, and this is not the last demo, but the third demo that we made was one of my favorites. We called this the Safe Driving Challenge. And what was great about this one is we really put people behind the wheel of a car. They actually had control over the gas. And what we did is we had them driving on a road at night in the rain. And this is like one of those cliffside mountain roads, right? They can spin, they can crash, they can go flying off the edge, they can run into obstacles. And in here, we are actually telling them directions, and they are supposed to use the information on the screen to make the right turns. And the very first thing we do is we have them in an area where the reflectivity is very bad. So this is the area where it does not have 3M products put on any of the material, right? And we show them how difficult it is to drive in an environment where trucks, large trucks that are broken down on the side of the road, do not have reflective sheeting on the side of them, where traffic signs don't have reflective sheeting on them, so it's harder to see from a greater distance which direction you're supposed to go, where work zone barrels are not as reflective, so it's harder to see them until the last second. And then we actually track all of this data inside of the demo, so we can actually see how many times did they crash, how many times did they run into something, how many times did they take a wrong turn, how many times did they spin out, what was their average speed throughout the demo. And what was great about this is we could present this data to a customer and they would understand very quickly what was challenging about this course. And then when they finished this one, it would bring them to another section. This time, the section is filled with highly reflective material. So in the high reflective material area, they can see things a lot better, and they actually do much, much better on the course. So you're going to see the difference here with high reflectivity versus low reflectivity very, very quickly. And what we saw was from the data we were able to collect that users had a much higher average speed in the high reflectivity area. They were also able to avoid crashing and were able to navigate very well along the course that we had created, right? And so this was one where we also really didn't hammer them over the head with the fact that this is 3M material. We just let them understand this stuff intuitively. So we said to them, hey, here's an area with low reflectivity. Here's an area with high reflectivity. You tell us which one you would prefer. And so there was a lot of pushback from that. A lot of the marketers wanted me to say throughout the demo, this is 3M sheeting that is, this such and such grade has such and such reflectivity. And we didn't have to do that because people just intuitively understood it while they were taking this demo. And this demo ended up being one of our favorite ones. We actually have this demo in pretty much all of the areas that TSD is a part of. We even had it on a truck that would travel across the country so other people could take this VR demo. Ended up working out really well. And we had a lot of learning from this too, which was that everyone is competitive. When we brought this to our first trade show, we actually had a leaderboard of how fast people could get through this demo. And people would be bringing their friends over to this area to try and beat their score. And we ended up getting more customer engagement at this trade show than any other trade show before, just because people were forcing their friends to come and take this demo as well. We also saw that empathy and data really helped people connect to our message, right? So when they were able to see the statistics that were put out, it matched with the lived experience they had when they did the demo, and it really communicated very well to them the benefits of our sheeting. And so we really took to heart that empathy message, and we decided to do an urban mobility VR demonstration. Now, this one is very close to my heart because this is a demonstration about how our products can make life easier for vulnerable road users. So we're really focused on showcasing how dangerous city streets are right now for walkers, scooter users, and bikers, and how our sheeting can help to make those areas safer. And we're utilizing empathy because the user is there standing in this scene, and they're able to see near miss accidents, things that we can all empathize with, right? So in this scene here, somebody's crossing at the mid block, which is their legal right to do so, and they almost get hit because this mid block is really not identified well that this is for pedestrians. And so we then give the power to the user to actually start to place 3M solutions in here so we can make this a more visible and safer intersection for pedestrians. And once they have successfully made these changes, we allow the user to see how the scenario changes now that this intersection has been made more visible. And we have a few different examples of this. And this demo was actually put out right before the pandemic. So we have not gotten the chance to really do as much with this as we'd like to, like bringing it to customers and showcasing it to them. But one of the things I like about this as well is VR is very expensive. And so we were asking ourselves, how can we not only make a VR demo that somebody can see inside of a headset, but one where people can see it in a lot of other formats? And so what we were able to do is we were able to create this VR demo. We were also able to export it as a 360 video too, that we could showcase to people. And then we were able to get really high resolution GIFs out of it. And all the 3D objects in here can be utilized in PowerPoints and on the website. And so we were able to get a lot of bang for our buck because when we were designing it, we knew kind of all the different endpoints we wanted this thing to be presented on. So that was really beneficial. Now, this one has my favorite story of sticking to your plan. We initially had developed this demo as we had proposed that we would be on top of a scooter that would be electronically controlling the demonstration. So the scooter would not be functional, but it would act as a controller inside of the VR headset. That ended up being too expensive for us. So instead of kind of taking a break and recollecting ideas to come up with a new concept, we just kind of pivoted right from there and tried to find something new. And the first iteration of this just did not end well. And this was one that we learned from as well. So you can see here, this is essentially the same demo as the one that I showed you earlier, where we're actually on the street level and able to see all the different solutions that 3M made. But this time we're really, really far up and away from the user. And this doesn't actually generate much empathy because we're so high above them. It almost seems like we have some sort of kind of a God complex about it. And so this just did not resonate with people at all. And so we knew that it wasn't working. And instead of just kind of saying, okay, well, we already paid for it, we're just going to stick with this, we decided to really go back to the drawing board and come up with a new design. And I think that's an important lesson. And so I tried to create some key principles based on all of these different demos that I had been making over the years. So my first key principle was prioritizing interactivity. Interactivity can be defined in a bunch of ways. It can be the ability to alter the environment, or it can just be engaging animations that make the user feel like they are in a vibrant and moving world. But it is important to keep the user engaged in the world that you have created. Number two is testing, testing, and testing. So testing is the most important thing you can do. I'm sure all of you guys know that already. Testing the game mechanics to make sure that they are functional, intuitive, and enjoyable. Testing your concept to make sure that it is communicating its intended message to the user. And you got to test early, you got to test often, and be ready to make changes when that's needed. And not to forget that there's a large variety of users to do the testing. Right? We don't want to get stuck with the problem where everybody that's doing this testing is internal and has a bias towards what you're actually trying to test for. We also, and this is another big one. So the third one is think in 360 degrees. So when designing for VR, remember that you are creating a whole world around the user. There are two ways to address this. Either have a mechanic that helps to control the user's attention to make sure that relevant content surrounds the user. make sure you have something that controls the user's attention, or make sure there's relevant content always surrounding the user, no matter where they look, and that there's always something they can see. One thing I really want to hammer home about this point of thinking in 360 is a lot of people that work on virtual reality start by working in videos. And when we're doing a video or an animation, typically we're only concerned about what you can see on the screen, right? And that's not necessarily beneficial when we're designing for virtual reality. In fact, virtual reality is more similar to video game design than it is anything else, right? So we get a lot of lessons from video game design when we're making these demos. Also, I'll put a pitch out there for the book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. Really good book about video game design, very fun read. I highly recommend it. So number 4, have a plan and stick to it. It's vitally important that you have a plan and storyboard ready for your demo. This is true for almost all design projects, obviously, but in my experience, is even more important for VR design, primarily because VR is really expensive, and having to shift your plans can cost a lot of money. And also VR takes a long time to make, and having to make big changes in the middle can absolutely destroy your timeline. And these are not changes that would, be easily shifted. When somebody wants to shift to a completely different product, or we need to make a ton more 3D models to make the shift, it's really, really detrimental. And last, but not least, utilizing empathy. So VR, when done properly, can create a sense of empathy that is greater than any other medium available to designers. It allows you to put the user directly in the shoes of someone else. It allows you to give them experiences that they might have otherwise been impossible. And this is the most effective tool that you have at your disposal when you're designing in virtual reality. So I think these are like 5 really broad principles, but I think they're very important when you're designing for VR. So that's everything I got for you today. So if you guys have any questions, and I'm more than happy to go into deeper detail on a lot of these topics.
All right, thanks so much, Andrew. People, get your questions in the chat or in Q&A. We'll be sure to get to them. I don't see anything yet, but I have a couple, so I'll go ahead and kick us off, Andrew.
Sure.
One of the things I was wondering, you said, some people are maybe skeptical or nervous about VR, and I was also wondering, just like whether there's an issue of trust in what you're showing in VR, because one of the things I was thinking as you're showing, this is how the reflective surface works, that a reaction you might get is, well, sure, it looks that way now. You can make it look however you want. This is VR. It's not real life. So how would you respond to that kind of concern?
Yeah, that's a concern that I've always had as well. We've never actually had a customer say that to us. Maybe they're just too polite to do so. But yeah, I think there has to just be trust from the customer that as a company, you guys aren't lying to them about that stuff. And I think that we always preface our demos anytime somebody goes in with a legal document that essentially says, or a legal statement that says, these are, this is a virtual replication of a real life product. And another key thing is that we don't give these VR demos in isolation. There's almost always a real life counterpart that we have with us when we do this, right? So for a lot of the transportation safety stuff, we're typically doing this at a trade show or in an environment where they've actually already seen many real demonstrations of how the product works. And this is just a piece that reinforces that. So I think that's probably key. Like if I was just giving this demo to people, without anything else around, it's just all they get is the virtual experience, I could see them being a lot less trusting of it. But since we are usually giving this experience along with several real world pieces to go along with it, I think that helps out a lot. And in some situations, like I think the reflectivity one is kind of unique in that way, where they might not trust us. But like with the urban mobility one, these are like undeniable solutions to problems that we all have felt when walking or biking in a city. And so in some situations, it's okay. In other situations, it's always better to have some real world things that can go along with it.
Great, thank you. And I see some questions coming in now, so thanks everyone, keep them coming. We'll just start with the first one that came in from Brad Goldberg. What programs do you create your VR experiences in?
So we primarily use Unity, which is, I think, I want to say the most common software used for VR production. Other people use Unreal Engine as well, which is fine too. I think we used Unity because a lot of the vendors that we work with use Unity as well. And so it made it really easy for us to make sure that if we are able to prototype something in-house, we can just give those files directly to the vendor. Or if we want to take files from one vendor and give it to another vendor, they're already in the right format that we want them in. And I see the next question here from Nate. How long does it take to actually develop a VR demo? That's a really great question. And there's a ton of variables in there, right? I think the level of complexity that you build into your demo is really going to be the key factor in how long it takes to develop, right? I think that in some instances, when there's less interactivity, it's going to take not as long to build it. In other instances where there's a lot of, hey, if you do this, then this happens, or if you give the user the more freedom you're giving the user to interact with your demo, the more complex you're making the demo, and the longer it's going to take to make sure that you don't have bugs in the code, that you that everything feels good and interacts well, and that your point is coming across. Though I can say that even if something is not necessarily complex from a coding standpoint, sometimes just the nature of 3D modeling a very rich environment can also take a long while. I would also say one of the things that's increased the timeline of a lot of my VR demos is when people actually get a chance to see it in VR, and then they realize, oh, I didn't fully understand this medium. Now I want to make a change, right? So this happens a lot with business people. So when I ask a business person to help me to develop a VR demo, right, and I want to know more about their product and understand better how they would normally showcase it to customers, sometimes because they don't understand how VR works, they give me maybe a half answer or maybe not as much information as I would really need. And so when we start developing it, we get into the testing phase and they actually put a headset on and see it. They have an immediate reaction and they say, oh, wait. If this is what you can really do with this headset, then I want to make some additional changes. So that stuff, I think, is a problem that's going to go away over time, though, as more people get experience with virtual reality. But I would say that has been probably the single greatest reason why my VR demos have been delayed.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the unmute button before, but I'll read off some more questions here for you. So Karen's asking, how can you accommodate people who wear glasses and want to try VR?
So there are a few ways. So some VR headsets actually sell a insert that you can put into the headset that will be built to your prescription. The other way is you can actually technically fit your glasses into a VR headset. Just some people with a really large head and really big glasses have a hard time with it. Most of the time, and I just actually got back from San Jose doing VR demos. Most of the time we can get people with glasses to get their heads into the headset. My big recommendation, I know this kind of sounds silly, but if you have glasses, a lot of people want to put a VR headset on the back of their head first and then slide it down. But for people with glasses, the real trick is to put your eyes in first and then put the back of the headset down. That usually helps out quite a bit. Also, a lot of headsets come with an insert in them that will help to give you a little bit more distance between the lens and your eyes. And then lastly, a shameless plug, 3M is actually making a new lens that goes into VR headsets. And if the headset is built properly, my understanding is you'll be able to adjust that lens to your prescription. So you won't even need to have any additional things that you need to purchase.
Okay, well, that's very cool. I will look forward to that. I haven't bought any VR stuff myself yet as a glasses wearer and lagger.
Contacts, but, right? Contacts is the other answer, which I know is not convenient for everybody. But
right. And Tracy's asking, how did you convince marketing that you didn't need to brand everything? I think that's referring to the demo you gave where you just let people experience it on their own.
I think you know, at the end of the day, there's just trust between me and that team that, you know, the demonstration we were going to be building was already in a space where branding was everywhere, right? So again, since we're doing these at trade shows and we're doing them in environments where there's actively salespeople there, I said that, all we're going to do is make this demo much, much longer, and people don't like being in VR for a really long time being talked at. So why don't we just give them the most impactful VR demo at that moment, get them really excited. And when they take the headset off, you can give all the marketing language you want at them. And that seemed to work out with them. And again, I try to keep the marketing team as involved as much as possible throughout the development. And since they're involved, I think they feel a little bit more ownership of it, and they allow for a little bit more creative freedom.
All right, great. I see there's some questions in chat too. So we got Joan Johnson is asking, can you tell us how the storytelling behind the VR plays into how the user accepts or rejects the product?
All right, sorry, can you say that again? I was reading another question while you said that.
Yeah, sorry. Well, and I'll try to paraphrase. Joan, feel free to pitch in here if we're getting this wrong. But I think the question here is to what extent does the story that you're telling through the VR experience result in ultimately the user having a positive or negative feeling about the product itself?
I think it's a really important element. People want to be entertained in there, right? They don't want to be just told a bunch of company language with no story to it. And so we really try to either do storytelling through the voiceover, because usually there is a voiceover in there, or through the way that the content sequentially appears to them. And again, I feel like just like if you were creating a video, or just like if you're creating trying to think of the right way of saying this. Customers want to be entertained, even if they're there for a business reason, right? And part of being entertained is being given a story that you can empathize with, and even a character that you can, even if that character is yourself, that you can root for. And I think we just want to build that in there. I don't know if that answers your question for you, Joan, but that's kind of my thought on it.
Yeah, we're still early on time, so if there's more questions or clarification, feel free to just keep these coming. I will go next to Kiana K and Mackenzie Leach asking about the same question, which is if someone wants to learn more about AR, VR, start doing design, what books, websites, videos, software would you recommend for getting started?
So I think the most important thing to do is just to immerse yourself in VR experiences, which is not always a cheap endeavor, right? VR headsets can be kind of expensive. I would say the best bang for your buck would be an Oculus Quest 2, which you can get for about $300. There are quite a few free experiences on there. And I would also recommend, there's an app called SideQuest that is a desktop companion app for the Oculus Quest. It's a third-party vendor that has an enormous amount of free experiences on it, right? So if you wanted to get into VR very quickly, getting a headset, getting SideQuest so you can experience a lot of developer prototype products that essentially SideQuest is somewhere that people publish to get testing done before they submit to the Oculus Quest official store. So there's a ton of really great demos in there. Either they're free or they're very, very cheap. But just getting experience in VR, doing it every day is such an important element to it. I also think just being somebody who's into video games has actually been extraordinarily helpful for me when designing for this, because the design process between video games and virtual reality is so similar. And a lot of the UI UX components that you would design for a video game is something you would design for virtual reality as well. And a lot of the people that we're hiring, to do VR work now actually come from game design schools. And so, understanding how 3D models are made, understanding how the game engine works, you don't necessarily need to know how to code at all. As long as you understand how everything is meant to come together and kind of what you want the end result to be, you can be really, really successful in this. Like I don't program at all or code myself. I do a lot of the storyboards. I help to interpret between the business and the agency how things are going to actually function inside of virtual reality. And I find a huge part of my job is actually doing demonstrations for people to help get them to better understand VR. So one of the skills that I think has really helped me out a lot that might help you out too is getting really comfortable explaining things to people, being really patient and helping them to understand this technology too. You also mentioned like books and stuff like that that you can read. I have never really found like a great like podcast to follow about this or anything like that. But two of the books that I think do a really good job of kind of talking about some of the larger concepts in VR that larger companies look to is Snow Crash and Ready Player One. These ones are kind of stereotypical, but I do really think they're good reads to kind of get into the mindset that some people have. Snow Crash, for instance, is where they get the term metaverse from. Ready Player One has the Oasis, and understanding how they kind of viewed what the future was going to be like, I think is going to be really important. Though I will say that in every virtual reality book, it's always a dystopian future, and VR is the escape from the totalitarian lives that they live in. So they can be kind of depressing reads as well. But I definitely I recommend that type of media.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Also, yeah, just good reads on their own. Those were both, especially Snow Crash, which came out a while ago. Definitely something I read long before actual accessible VR was even a thing.
Yeah, Snow Crash is a really interesting book. It's got some weird scenes in it, but it's oddly prescient. I think it was made in 1995 before VR was really like a big hot topic. And they did predict quite a bit about how people would be interacting with it in the future. And yeah, I think it's definitely worthwhile read if you're into this.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And, I'm going to add one more layer on this, which Kiana mentioned also that, or asked about what if you're a young designer, and just wondering if you're not sure about VR, if it's something you're just dipping your toes and you're not ready to invest in your own equipment. Do you have any advice on like where you might go or what you might try just to try it out? And I know I'll just throw in, there are places around town where you can go and have like a short VR experience. We actually had an event a couple of years back at REM 5 VR Lab, which is one of those spaces where you can just try some games, do some stuff. But any other recommendations for that, Andrew?
Yeah, it's hard because a lot of those VR experiences that you would get when you go to like a VR bar or a VR area is they're very singular, and they don't really have a ton of user interaction like experiences that you can get out of them. So I find that like if you go to the Void, which I think is now bankrupt, or you go, I think there's a VR bar in Golden Valley, I want to say. You're going to be getting a VR experience for sure. It's still expensive, and it's not going to give you a huge variety to take a look at. In reality, I'm happy to give people VR demos. Like if you guys are located in the Twin Cities, I'm more than happy to give people VR demos to try and get them a better understanding of this. And I think that, even if you're able to find like a cheaper, older VR headset, even like an original Oculus Rift, you're going to be able to find those for pretty cheap and still be able to run a lot of free demos that are available on Steam. And that variety, I think, is really, really important. So I don't know if I would recommend necessarily some of the kind of like VR gaming bars that exist. Those aren't like bad things or anything like that. It's just not going to be enough to really get a better grasp on it. And this is something where I think just having a headset, even if it gets outdated really, really quickly, is important.
Yeah, that's great. And I imagine too, at this point, there might be a lot more secondhand equipment available now that it's been out for a couple of generations.
Absolutely. Oculus Quest 1 is still very, very good. And it was only on the market for about a year before they replaced it with the Quest 2. And a lot of people replaced their Quest 1. So there's quite a few Quest 1s that are available out there on the market.
Great. And we got one more question, Brad. We're going to get to that, but this is a good reminder, since you mentioned people can get in touch with you for a demo. I usually ask at the end, but I don't want to forget, how should people contact you, Andrew, if they want to talk more about this or see this for themselves?
I think you can just email me. It's andrewbaussan@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. So then Brad asks, how much time are you investing into AR, and are you using the HoloLens?
Yeah, so we're using the HoloLens a lot, actually. And the HoloLens is really interesting, and AR in general is really, really interesting. So I don't know how many of you have experience with the HoloLens. I think I left mine at work, but it's a really unique device, right? Because you can fully see through it at all times, right? And so it's wearable AR, which is great. And also, if its battery goes out, you're not going to be left in the dark, right? It's something where it's essentially just safety glasses at that point. So the HoloLens 2 is specifically built for manufacturing environments, right? This is an OSHA approved safety glass AR headset. And its really, really big purpose is remote assist. Basically, there's a camera right in the forehead of the HoloLens 2. And if I have a machine that breaks down at a warehouse, instead of flying somebody out to come fix it, I can put my HoloLens 2 on, I can call them from that headset, and they can essentially see through my eyes and give me different, what's the right word here? Give me different types of interaction points on that device that allow me to fix it more easily, right? And if we ever wanted to do a more distinctly AR focused session, we could do that as well, where I can call in from the headset and kind of showcase what that looks like. The challenges there is that it's a very expensive headset. It's about $4,500. And there's a lot of limitations that the HoloLens 2 has when developing more robust consumer-focused augmented reality demos. What we're going to be seeing in the future, though, is virtual reality headsets like this with pass-through AR. Now, you can see that there's cameras on this headset right now, and these cameras are pretty much for positional tracking, right? So these cameras see the space around me and map it, but they're doing that so they know that if I move in that space, how it should have me move in the corresponding VR demo that I'm doing. In the future, though, these are going to be much higher resolution cameras, and they're going to give me a pass-through AR experience. So I'll be able to see the real world through these cameras, and then it will do all of the augmented reality inside of the headset, which is a lot easier for it to do than on the glass that it does with HoloLens. These are two completely different use cases, though. So, this type of headset is never going to be used in a manufacturing setting, because if this runs out of power, I won't be able to see, and it's very, very dangerous. And this is not actually like tempered glass, so it's not really going to protect my face if something runs into it, right? So I think that augmented reality is going to be shifting considerably when the next generation of VR headsets come out and have pass-through AR capabilities that are more robust than the current generation of headsets have.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It looks like that's the end of our questions.
I'm sorry, Andy, there's one more question.
Oh,
Is
yeah, go
3M
ahead.
taking over
from
the
Thomas
metaverse?
here?
The answer is yes, Thomas, they are.
You heard it here first. 3M is taking over the metaverse. So be prepared for that. All right. Well, thank you again, Andrew. Really appreciated having you here and sharing your expertise with us, all the experience that you've got. And thanks everyone for attending. Any final thoughts, last words you want to leave us with before we close for the night?
No, it was really exciting to talk with you guys. And I think it's been kind of a journey for me. I never really considered myself like a UX designer, but I know that that's true for a lot of people. Maybe you go to school for graphic design or some other form of design, or maybe you don't even go to school for design and you end up with a weird job that forces you into UX design. And I think that's kind of what I ended up with. And one thing I really want to leave you guys with is, one reason why I think that you guys should be really, really interested in VR in the future is because VR is like all UX design. You have to teach somebody how to move again. Like they have to learn how to walk again in virtual reality. You have to teach them, how are you going to interact with things, how are you going to use your hands, right? And so there's just so many different UX challenges that you can run into that are so extraordinarily unique. And as this technology becomes a bigger and bigger part of our lives, I think it's going to be even more important that you guys be invested in it as well.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Thanks everyone. We'll close up shop now. We're done for the month. So I hope we'll see y'all next month, and have a great May, and take care. See you next time.
See you later.
Bye.